You first. How would you decide? Well, I don't know. Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent. This is, of course, based on the what is it? Zelda 2. Yeah, Zelda 2. So, I'm here. Bent is here. Hello, Bent.
Hi.
You're looking very warm today.
I feel warm.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess that works out then. Well, good job. Let's see. What are we doing? Oh, right. So, hello, chat, everybody. We have a super chat goal. There are a few things there. First of all, if we get to 15, then yeah, I'm going to drop a Steam key. Today's stream key is Vermintide 2. So Vermintide 2 is a co-op PvE multiplayer thing. It's basically the same genre as Left 4 Dead, but it's set in the Warhammer world, in Warhammer Fantasy. And you are fighting through the remains of a city in the Empire during the end times as the Skaven are emerging en masse. So you're trying to kill off all the Skaven. You know, the world is going to blow up no matter what you do, but still, it can be a fun time to kill some rats. I've played that game a fair bit. I quite enjoy it. I enjoy the first one. So yeah, there you go. If we get to 30, I'm gonna wear the tutu on the next count with Bent. Yeah.
Very nice.
And if we get to Bent wears a tutu, then he will just be able to wear it on the one after that. We'll just know that he has one that he owes us. So, yeah. So, Bent, what's new with you?
Oh, nothing much.
No?
No.
I mean, I feel like there was a lot. Like, I think you even got the heater fixed.
I did. Yes, the heater broke. Not that we need it yet, because it's still warm here.
Yeah, because of Arizona.
But in a few weeks, we'll definitely need it, so I had to get that fixed.
Yeah. Yep. Let's see. But, yeah, overall, not much. I do want to let everyone know that there is going to be a show where I'm not going to be here on this channel because I have someplace to be at the end of the month. So one of our regularly scheduled Dapper Reacts is actually just going to be Chesh and Vish reacting to some stuff. And Chesh has found some stupid stuff that she wants to go over, which is to say, it looks like TikTok Christians reacting to K-pop demon hunters and saying that it is in fact actual demonic stuff that will actually endanger your soul. So, Bent, don't watch K-pop demon hunters.
Okay. I'll keep that in mind.
Otherwise, you might be possessed by a real demon.
Oh, no.
Yeah, you don't want that.
That sounds horrible.
It does. Unless it's like a party demon. That might be cool. Oh, do they have party demons? Is that even a thing?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Alright, well, I'll have to ask my demon buddies. Because, as we all know, arguing against Kent Hovind means I must be a demon of some kind. You know, I bet Dearth would call me a demon. Flat Earther. Flat Earth Dave. I think he would think I'm a demon. He says MC Toon is a demon, and Craig is a demon, and Will Duffy is a demon.
Really?
Yeah. I feel like I have way more in common with them than I do with Flat Earth Dave, so I guess I would be a demon. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Flat Earth Dave or K-pop demon hunters or anything else like that. We're here to talk about Kent Hovind, the man, the myth, the felon. So, what? It's true.
It's true. It's funny because it's true.
Exactly. He's a felon. I didn't convict him. A jury of his peers convicted him. Although I don't think they found people quite as brain dead or dishonest as Hovind, so, like, were they really his peers? They probably should have, like, I don't know, trolled, like, the hospital for people in a vegetative state, because that would be his peers. But, they didn't, so we got a jury of presumably competent individuals. So, when we were last here talking about Kent Hovind, he was talking about the mystery of what happened in the days of Peleg. Because there's a character in the Bible named Peleg, he's in Genesis, and basically he only appears in the genealogy, where it says, you know, so-and-so begat Peleg, and in the days of, for in his day, he was named Peleg for in his day that the land was divided. And the name Peleg comes from a Semitic root that means like to dig a furrow or to divide or something like that. And so Kent is going on about like, what does that mean? What could that possibly mean? And so I point out that almost certainly what's actually going on there is that this is talking about the division of the land into the nations, because right around that spot in Genesis we get what's called the Table of Nations, where we get a description of where the nations are and who lives in them and whatnot, which is also connected to the inheritance of the divine council of the various nations. It's all connected. There's a whole theme there. But Kent is willing to entertain all sorts of other stuff, like maybe that's when Pangea broke up, or maybe that's when the Tower of Babel happened, or whatever. And like, I can't say he's definitely wrong about that, right? Because I don't have access to the mind of whoever wrote this down. But like, it's pretty obvious that the most likely explanation is just the dividing of the lands into the nations, with the different patrons in charge of each nation, and the inheritance of Yahweh is in fact the land of Israel, which is in there in Genesis. That's his inheritance. So like, I don't know why it has to be complicated. But Dutch Tunicate Official, who's been a member for 18 months, says we got Savage Dapper tonight. That's right. Or maybe it's, I don't know. I'm in a funny mood, you know? That's actually true. I'm in a funny mood. I don't know what's up. But before we get into it, we do have a drinking game that we do with this. And before we actually start the drinking game, I do want to say, everybody, you absolutely do not have to play along with drinking game with alcohol, or at all if you don't want to. If you do want to play along and you don't want to use alcohol, that's absolutely fine. You know, just do whatever you want. Use tea, coffee, water, juice, soda, eat a chip or a cracker. Whatever you meant. It's fine. This is just for fun. This isn't like a real game where anyone's keeping score or anything, even though I do have a drink score counter thingy here. But that's not important right now. But what is important is that if you do decide to play along with any kind of intoxicating substance, that you do so safely. Pace yourself, know your limits. We're not drinking shots here. We're drinking, like, I'm drinking some sips of lychee soju, which has been charcoal filtered for a refreshing and clean taste. So there you go. Thanks, charcoal. Yeah, so if you do decide to go ahead and play along with some kind of intoxicating substance, please note that neither myself nor Hovind nor the channel as a whole accept any responsibility or liability. This is a play at your own risk sort of thing. Consult a physician, I don't know, consult a priest, do whatever you need to. With that being said, we're going to launch into what the drinking rules are. So first of all, we will take a drink if Hovind says something so stupid that we just kind of have to cool our brains down. One of our more common ones. We'll just take a drink for every joke that doesn't land that Hovind tells, or for any story that doesn't happen. So for instance, if Hovind tells us about the time that a museum docent became a Christian after a result of his daughter questioning him about the alleged circular reasoning behind the dating of fossils. Yeah, that's a story that probably didn't happen, at least not the way that he's telling it. So we'll take a drink. Now, is that a little bit of a judgment call? Absolutely. I'm okay with that. We will also take a drink if Hovind. I was gonna repeat the story thing. That's not it. If he cites a source and then we check that source, and the source not only fails to support him, which it almost always will, but rather it directly contradicts him, we call that a Trojan source. Take a drink for it. If Hovind mentions that group of that political party from the 1930s in Germany, then we'll take a drink for that too. Or their leader, or any of their more notorious activities, shall we say. We'll also take a drink if either Bent or I can successfully predict what Hovind is about to say. We'll also take a drink if Hovind actually gets something factually correct that is not just something that's in like a slide of his that he's reading from a source, but it has to actually be like in his brain. He has to actually know it. Sapphire Rip Names Light says, should I consult an oracle before participating in the drinking game? That's going to be up to you, but I don't think it would be a bad idea. Bent, have I missed any that Kent can cause?
Ad hominid.
Ad hominid. I did forget ad hominid. So we only get one ad hominid per stream maximum. Usually it's 0, but we can get one. And that's when the creationist, in this case Kent Hovind, confuses what we can know from just the specimen Lucy of Australopithecus afarensis with what we can know about any wider taxon to which she belongs, including her species, based on other finds, right? So if he's like, well, we don't know if Lucy could have walked upright because we don't have her feet. Yeah, well, we have other Australopithecus feet, so we know Australopithecus could walk upright. Doesn't matter. That's ad hominid. The reason we only get one is because once a creationist does it once, they're just going to keep doing it for, like, a lot. So, like, I don't want to just sit here and just chug the lychee soju. I want to have it, be able to enjoy it. Now, there are ways that you can make us drink. One of the easiest ways is gifting memberships. Every membership gifted, we take a drink. So if you want to make us take 10 drinks, give 10 memberships. Also, any super chat or membership milestone chat that includes anything to the effect that Answers in Genesis is a bag of dicks, we'll take a drink for. You have to be a little bit creative. If you just type that in English, YouTube will say no. So you got to type it in another language, or couch it, or something like that, right? Let's see. We'll also take a drink if Mothra or Ghidorah come by audibly, or you send a super chat or milestone membership chat, there you go, that has any of our kaiju emojis in it. We've got Godzilla, we've got Mothra, we've got King Ghidorah. And we will also take a chat if I screw up the production. So, for instance, if I decide to, or I forget to, say, unmute someone after we come back from a break, or if I switch to the wrong scene, or I forget to turn off the opening credits when we come back from a break, something like that, right? We take a drink for Dapper as a professional. Now, what doesn't count is if software glitches, or the internet goes out, or an asteroid hits Alphabet HQ, something like that, right? That's not on me. That's not a Dapper's a professional. So, there you go. And I think I've covered them. Alright.
That's all of them.
Goop23 for $5 says, AIG's a bag of me not knowing daylight savings time has ended. Yeah. So if you're wondering, why does this show seem to be at a different time? It's because y'all changed your clocks. I didn't. Neither did Bent. So, take that, rest of the world that isn't Arizona. I was going to say America, but most of America did it too, because most of America's dumb. Stop doing it, everybody. Here's a fun thing, right? You know how, like, the time change is something the government says? You can just not do it, and there's no penalty for not changing your clock. You could all just decide collectively, as a group, we're just not gonna. And you know what the government's gonna do about it? Nothing. That's it. Jillian Wren, who's been a member for 30 months, says, I would like to apologize for the lack of bingo, but it's been a rough day. I had to make 2 medical-related phone calls. I'm sorry. Jillian, look, you do a lot to help keep this community going, and I don't think that you need to apologize for that. It's fine. You do a lot more than is required in any conceivable universe. So I don't want you to worry about that too much. I appreciate it every time you do help with the bingo. But yeah. All right, Bent, are you ready for more about whatever the heck Kent thinks Peleg is up to, or was up to, or whatever?
Yeah, I am.
All right.
I'm not too thrilled about it, but
well, you know, maybe you shouldn't have started watching Kent Hovind debates with me like 6 years ago, which eventually evolved into this. You didn't think about that, did you?
No, I didn't.
I didn't.
But here we are.
Yeah. Here we go.
Third theory. That says the Earth was divided because the water came up. As the ice caps melted back, the water came up and divided the high spots into islands and continents.
I mean, I guess from his standpoint, that could make some sense, right? Because Ken thinks there was a post-flood ice age that lowered the water level, allowing a bunch of land bridges. And I mean, he's not wrong that there was, in fact, a series of ice ages, but anyway, that lowered water levels, creating land bridges, which is why we had a lot of, like, faunal interchange between, like, places like Northeast Asia, North America, which is how humans got to North America, and, like, across, like the Pacific Islands over in, like, the Indonesia and Melanesia area. Although he thinks that is also a plausible explanation for how things like kangaroos and whatnot got to Australia, which it's not, because there is, in fact, a deep ocean trench there, which would not have a land bridge exposed. And also, it doesn't do anything to explain why, like, kangaroos could get there, but, like, deer and tigers couldn't. So, like, his model isn't what you would call well thought out. In fact, I hesitate to even call it a model.
That is certainly a reasonable theory, and maybe several of these are true. Maybe there's some truth to each of these, I don't know. But if the ice is melting back, what's that doing to the ocean level? It's raising it.
I just realized we didn't drink for Goop23's chat. Sorry about that, Goop23. There we go. Ooh, that's good. I like lychee. It's one of my favorite fruits that I almost never eat.
What used to be all connected, now all of a sudden, instead of mountains, you now have islands. And the area between becomes filled with water. So that's one theory. The fourth theory...
Notice that while he's purporting to be a science teacher, when he says theory, he certainly doesn't mean theory in the scientific sense. These are barely even hypotheses. These are just things people made up one day.
As the land was surveyed. By the days of Peleg, they got so many people, they said, look, let's quit fighting over who gets what. Okay, we're going to draw some lines. You know, you get from the tree to the bushes and to the river. You know, here's your property, here's my property. Just like people have done for generations. You know, they divide up the land and they put up a fence and say, you know, this is my side, that's your side.
This one actually has some, like, etymological backing. Because remember, Peleg comes from a word that is related to things like digging furrows, right? And in some places, like in Akkadian, that ends up being a word for, like, digging a canal. But also, you could dig a furrow as a property line. So, like, I actually find this one a reasonably plausible thing for what the author might have been trying to say in this bit of Genesis. Which is weird to say, because Kent is like, hey, here's what the author meant. And I'm like, well, 2 of your 4 are actually not completely crazy. I don't think any of this is historical, but, like, in terms of the internal narrative, yeah, a survey probably would work. I don't know that the author is imagining a society so small that one survey could actually, you know, like, divide up property line. I also don't know what, like, the deal was with surveying and whatnot in the ancient world when this was being written. But at first blush, at least, or first pass, not super crazy.
Stay over there. I don't think that would have an effect on shortening lives, but number 3 certainly would. If the water's coming up, it's coming up because of ice melt, which is going to lower the temperature of the water.
Okay, I mean, yeah, it would. But also, the world as a whole is getting warmer, so, like, the temperature of the water is going to rise overall. Ken has this weird thing where, like, ice ages are made of, like, hot oceans and cold land, and that's just not true. Hot oceans result in in warm land. One of the ways you can tell is that places near warm water currents are warmer than places at, like, the same latitude, but at colder water currents. So, ever been to, like, Massachusetts or someplace in North America with about the same latitude?
Yes, I have.
Pretty cold, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know that's about the same latitude as, like France? Which is not nearly as cold.
Yeah.
It's because there's a lot more warm water currents there. Warm water warms up the land nearby. Because, you know, I mean, just think about it at a basic level. What's going to warm you up more if you drink it? Warm water or cold water?
I think warm water.
Yeah. Yep. Because that's how, like, heat transfer works. And you can say, oh, but he needs a lot of precipitation to get the ice age. That's not going to be solved by warm water, because that warm water is going to evaporate into a warm atmosphere and fall as warm rain, or at least not as snow. So, like, that doesn't help. Sure, it gets you more precipitation, but it's more rain. The problem is that ice ages are actually not super high precipitation, because the water's colder, and so it takes a lot longer for the water to evaporate. And so there's less of it in the atmosphere to rain down or snow down. Oh, but you need a lot of snow. Well, I guess it's a problem for your whole young Earth thing, isn't it? Sorry.
As water gets colder, it starts to absorb carbon dioxide. When your soda pop gets warm, it loses its fizz. Carbon dioxide is what they put into soda pop to make it fizzy.
Hey, he got that right. Take a drink. Although, I've had nitrogen fizziness in other things. That's always weird. That's actually what a lot of the fizz is in Guinness, if I remember correctly. That's why the bubbles are all weird and, like, flow down the side of the glass and whatnot. Because of nitrogen.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. If it gets colder, it's going to absorb CO2. As it gets warmer, it loses CO2.
I actually have not looked into that, and I do not know the degree to which CO2 absorption into the water, which makes carbonic acids, is like temperature dependent. I just don't know. But also, like CO2 going into the water, outside of a situation where you're pressurizing a soda, is generally not going to go in there just as dissolved carbon dioxide. It's going to split up into like carbon and nitrogen, and they're going to form their own bonds. But like whatever.
So cold water would tend to absorb CO2 out of the oxygen, out of the air, out of the atmosphere.
Okay, he got it.
And CO2 is a greenhouse gas that is one of the many things that protects us from radiation.
What? What radiation does CO2 protect? I'm taking a drink. This is like X-rays are stopped by water. Carbon dioxide primarily is opaque, which means it absorbs infrared radiation, which is not the kind of radiation you're worried about when you're worried about like solar radiation doing things like damaging your skin or giving you cancer. In fact, like what really is the problem is UV rays, which are not well blocked by anything in the atmosphere, but are blocked by window glass. So, yeah, window glass will block UV, but it doesn't block infrared. You know how you can tell? Hey, Bent, what do the dogs like to do when the sun is shining through the window?
They like to lay in the sun.
They do. Why is that?
Because it warms them up.
And would it do that if CO2 was just being blocked?
I don't think so.
Yeah, probably not. So yeah, I don't know what craziness Kent is talking about here, but yeah, carbon dioxide is not a major element in preventing you from being irradiated from the sun.
So if they began 200 years after the flood began to lose their protection from radiation, that may cause genetic factors to come in, that they begin to live shorter lives because of increased radiation.
Okay, look. Jeez. Where do I even... I'm taking a drink. This is stupid. I don't know what to do. Okay. Give me a second to compose myself here. Okay, on the one hand, it is the case that increased radiation would probably cause reduced lifespan as a result of mutations. Not necessarily as a result of like germline mutations, where you're passing down harmful mutations to your offspring, but more in the sense of like irradiating your skin, causing skin cancer, which is then going to metastasize and cause all sorts of problems that way, right? It's going to be a cancer problem, not so much a genetics in terms of reproduction problem. But that doesn't mean that that's not a problem. But there's a few problems with this. First of all, decreasing CO2 is not going to cause that. One of the ways you can tell is that the rate at which adults get cancer has not changed much in the last few hundred years, while the amount of CO2 in the atmosphere has changed significantly in the last few hundred years. So if these two things were tightly correlated, we would expect there to be a drop-off in the rate at which adults get cancer right now. There isn't. There's an increase in the rate at which adults survive cancer, but like the per annum rate of like how likely you are to get cancer as an adult human has not changed in probably ever. But like certainly not in the last few hundred years. So we've got that problem. Metageeky Platypus Warlock for $5 says, I forgot to eat dinner. Medical vampires took my blood earlier. Medical vampires are disgusted at the pustule collection of 2 mules that is AIG. We'll take a drink for that. That's pretty good. Also, you should get some food. Darklaw, who's been a member for 39 months, is at the amulet level, sends Godzilla, Mothra, Ghidorah, and a drink emoji, which means we will indeed take a drink. Thank you very much. Alright, so, the other problem here is that as the world warms up, that should reset itself. So you probably still shouldn't see shorter lifespans. Lifespans should have shot back up. Also, if this is causing... No, I already said that. I was going to talk more about cancer. So basically, none of this actually works because the mutations that you're worried about are not the ones that are going to affect your offspring. And we don't see cancer rates fluctuating with CO2 rates. Like, we just don't.
Because of decreased carbon dioxide. chain of events. Okay? So these ice caps are melting back, forming the glacier effects, and raising the oceans. As the oceans get more water in them, three things happen. They get wider, deeper, and colder.
Hey.
As the oceans get wider, this is going to create a continental shelf.
No, Kent. The continental shelves were already there. It's just that more of them were land before. The shelf is the actual physical structure. It's not the fact that it's underwater that matters. If you took all the water away, they would still be the continental shelves. Jeez, Kent, why? Why do you do this to me? Why do you have to get everything wrong? Even things you don't need to get wrong. You get wrong routinely. Stop it. Please don't do that. But why do I do this?
For fun.
You're right. Oh, so what is wrong with me?
Well,
Guys, send more super chats so I can afford to see a therapist about what's wrong with me for doing this for fun. I live in America. Therapy is really expensive.
It appears like that used to be the beach way out there.
Does it appear that way? Because it doesn't to me. It appears that the beach was farther out there, but like we don't have things like beach rocks or anything all the way down to the bottom. So like, what evidence do you have of this, Kent?
And it might have been the beach for a while until this, as the ice melted back. And I suspect in some areas, like in Washington, where I just was in Dry Falls, Washington, there might have been, as the ice was melting back, there might have been a giant lake dammed up. All of a sudden, it gets too much water in it, it all flows out.
There was, Kent, actually. That's a real thing that happened. We'll take a drink. Good job, Kent. The problem is that it has nothing to do with the flood, and we know that it took place longer ago than you think the Earth has been around, so, you know. Also, it happened repeatedly, so there's that, too. So, but at least he's right, that it was a big old buildup of a lake from glacial melt that flooded out onto the rest of Washington and parts of Oregon.
Great Dry Falls, Washington, they say there was more water going over that. There's no water over it now. I mean, it's a dry waterfall.
Yeah, that's why they call it Dry Falls.
But there was more water going over that at one time than all of the rivers in all of the world combined. Well, probably that was a post-flood ice age lake, and it might have been 100 or 200 years after the flood. All of a sudden, all that water dumps through it. It finally got enough melted back. As ice melts, it does funny things. Sometimes you have a glass of Coke with a bunch of ice in it, all of a sudden you hear a noise and it's flipping over. You know, ice does all sorts of strange things as it melts back.
I'm sitting here looking at the ice cubes in my glass here, because I don't drink the soju fast enough for it to not go room temperature. And like I'm just waiting for them to crack or flip or something, and they're just bobbing here. I don't know. Do you have ice in your glass, Bent?
I do.
If it flips, let me know. The only time I see ice do anything like that is like if I have like a tall glass and the ice has like wedged itself against the sides so that now there's a gap between where the ice is and the liquid is. As that melts, sometimes they'll like collapse into the liquid and then they'll drop and there'll be a little plop and, you know, they'll bounce around in liquid. But like, that's the only thing I can think of. I have no idea what else he's talking about. If you know what he's talking about in chat, let me know. And yeah, I don't know if it counts as a story that didn't happen. I think it's just a lie.
And it may have trapped a large lake right there in Dry Falls, Washington.
I mean, it did. It just did. We know that.
Just about 100 miles from Spokane. It's 100 miles to the left, to west. If you look at this map, you know the English Channel.
A friend of mine is in Spokane right now.
Between England and France is less than 150 feet deep.
Okay.
150 feet from here to the street. Not even that. That's 300 feet from here to the street. That's 30 miles wide. Get some graph paper and draw a graph showing what 150 feet looks like on 30 miles.
Is this Kent going full flat Earth and being confused by like 3 dimensions? Is that what's happening right now?
I think so.
Okay. Kent is like, how can something be big in one dimension and small in another dimension? That's impossible. Like everything has to be like a regular polyhedron or a sphere or something.
It's nothing. France,
It's not nothing, Ken. It's a very low amount of depth compared to the width, but like it's way more than enough for you to drown in.
and England and Ireland and Scotland and Wales was probably all part of one big countryside. You could actually walk to Iceland.
Yeah. I'm really wondering what the point is here. Like, I know that generally takes this and turns this into like human migration patterns and whatnot, right? And he's not super wrong about that. But like, what is that helping us with? What is that telling us? What aspect of science are you trying to explain to us, Ken? Are you just saying cool things? And I think that actually might be it. Because remember, for Ken, what science is, it's a collection of cool facts, right? He doesn't actually know what science is. He doesn't know about things like scientific method, hypothesis testing, falsifiability, statistics, p-values, what p-hacking is. Like, he doesn't know any of that stuff, right? The stuff that scientists actually have to do in their daily jobs. Instead, for him, science is stuff like, hey, did you know that if you use a leaf blower hose in the right way, you can suspend a beach ball in the airstream because of like Bernoulli's principle? Like, okay, yeah, that's cool, but like, that's a little engineering like trick. It's not really science. You're not learning anything. You're not producing any new data for physics or anything. But for Kent, that's what science is. A bunch of cool little things.
There might have been some ice dams that broke loose and carved out little valleys later, but there's underwater erosion marks all over the place. Do you see between Norway and Scotland, like that little valley underwater? Right about dead center in the picture. I bet there was some erosion, some water running into the...
Hey, editor, you've shown the northern part of this map before. If Kent's going to start talking about Scotland and Scandinavia, you can show up north and not say the Mediterranean, which is not what he's talking about. Because I don't know if anyone can see, but like right now we're seeing, the Atlas Mountains and the Iberian Peninsula and the Western Mediterranean and, stuff like that, which is... Then my geography isn't great. Is Spain super close to like I don't know, the North Sea? Remind me. Like, we see the North Sea on this map?
I don't think so.
No, I don't think so either. In fact, I don't think we can see Scotland on this map if I'm looking at this correctly.
Yeah, I can't see it.
Huh. Weird.
Hmm.
And the thing is, we know he has an editor, right? Because they cut to this. This was a choice. An editor made the choice to show a part of the map that Kent isn't talking about. I find that to be a bizarre choice. In fact, it makes me think that maybe Kent is the editor. Because it's hard for me to imagine anyone else who's dumb enough to talk, or to hear Kent talking about what, as has been helpfully pointed out by Jillian Wren, is Doggerland, and then not show the part of the world where Doggerland was.
North Sea, and the whole canyon is now underwater. It's filled in. Underwater erosion marks.
Filling in a canyon means filling in the rock and sediment and dirt, not filling it with water. That's just an underwater canyon, Ken. I'm taking another drink. Or like, it's filled in with water. But you ever do that thing that kids do sometimes where you just get a shovel, you start digging a hole, just because?
Oh, yeah.
And then, like, when your parents comes out and is angry because now there's a big hole in the yard for no reason.
Oh, there was a reason.
Well, yeah, but there wasn't a reason that your parent considered to be a good reason.
That's true.
Did they ever tell you to fill it back in?
Yes.
Do you think they would have been happy or upset if you then got a hose and filled it with water?
Probably mad.
Okay, just checking. Just checking. Because, like, maybe that's just a weird me thing, and my parents, they got angry with me when I made holes, and I'm pretty sure they would have been angry with me if I tried to fill it in with water. I'm sorry, water.
Marks are very
Water.
common all over the world. As the Atlantic Ocean filled in, it would finally spill backwards into the Mediterranean. Now, let's suppose this happened 200 years after the flood was over.
Okay, so slightly before Abraham gets to Egypt. Okay,
In 200 years, how many people could there be on the Earth?
That's a good question. But what do you think's a pretty good population rate? Or, like, how many kids are people going to be having? Maybe 4?
I think 4.
Okay.
4 or
well,
5.
let's break out a calculator here. So let's say 4 kids survive to adulthood to reproduce, right? Because we got to remember early on, super high infant mortality, right? Even then, lots of childhood mortality, but also people having lots of kids. So we'll say 4, but that's also like just doubling, right? Because it takes 2 people to make each kid. Let's say that the population doubles every, say, 25 years, right? Okay, so we'll use the compound interest formula, and we'll say that 2 raised to the power of 2 times 200 divided by 25. I think a reasonable estimate would be about 65,500 people. That's what happens if you raise 2 to the power of 2 times 200 divided by 25. So, yeah. Now, I think there's a problem with that, in that I don't think that's enough to populate all of the places that we know had civilizations, 4,000 years ago. So, yeah. But, yeah, 65,500, I think, is a pretty good estimate.
You have no reason to not have lots of kids. Matter of fact, it's an advantage to have lots of kids. You got more.
There is a reason. You can only have so many kids. Remember, death in childbirth is a hugely common thing that occurs. And, what's really hard to do is have more kids after you died in childbirth. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
More hands to farm the land, take care of things. So let's just suppose, if they're living to be 400 years old, suppose they're having 40 kids per family.
40? I don't think we have any reason to think that, but let's see what happens if we put in 40 here.
40?
Well, it's like 4.2 times 10 to the 25th. It's not a reasonable sum. But thanks, Kent. Oh wait, no, I'm putting in the wrong number. It's actually, I'm pretty sure, going to be much higher than that. I put that in as the actual number, but it should be, yeah. Okay, so it's more like 2.1 times 10 to the 96th. Not a reasonable number. This is not a thing that has ever happened in the history of humans ever, Kent. Not once. I'm gonna take a drink for how absurd these numbers are, no matter which way I look at it. Also, can you imagine, even over the course of 400 years, having 40 kids as, someone who's going to be giving birth to and being pregnant with all of these kids? You're not going to survive 40 childbirths. It's not going to happen. Yeah. Look, you'll be lucky to survive 20 childbirths. And this is all without modern medicine. People frequently died during their first childbirth. That's a pretty common thing to have happen throughout history. And then Kent's like, what about 40, though? No. No one is going to be able to survive giving birth 40 times. It's just not going to happen, especially in the ancient past. Yeah, as DM points out, childbirth was the most common cause of death for women until modern medicine. Yeah. Every single time you give birth without modern medicine, you were absolutely just rolling the dice on dying in childbirth. I don't think Ken understands the degree to which the past is the worst. Medical technology is the reason virtually everyone currently alive is actually alive and didn't die early on as a baby or as a small child or in childbirth or whatever else.
Yeah, I would have died as a small child.
Mm-hmm.
Or for life-saving asthma medication.
Yep. And if you're a mother here in the chat, there's probably 20% chance that you just have died by now. Yeah. Just because you're a mother.
Or 50 kids. You do that for 200 years.
Becca Justiniano says, Ken doesn't know about pregnancy because he's never been pregnant. That's probably true. Ken's like, well, that's just something that someone else has to worry about. Why should I know about that? Yeah, Ken, why would you care about, things that your wife has to go through? You certainly don't care about her.
you got a population of thousands of people already. They're building cities.
I like how he says thousands, because he clearly hasn't actually done the math on this. Oh my goodness. Sapphire Ripnin says Kent said 40 per family. He probably meant one man and his biblical child bearers. Maybe, but Kent is pretty like he's a serial monogamist, right? But he's a pretty big pusher of like one man, one woman, in the context primarily of saying, that like marriage equality is bad. But like I think he would extend that to his hypotheticals about like population growth. I can't be certain though. Yep, Zerlon would also have died without medicine as a child.
Now, if you're building a city in what is now the Mediterranean Sea, a couple of hundred years later, all of a sudden, the Mediterranean Sea fills in. Water comes up.
Okay, but Kent, we don't have a lot of evidence of cities that are under the Mediterranean except like right near the current coasts. And a lot of those are probably buried not by water level rising, but by the land subsiding. So like we don't actually have any evidence of this happening. Now we do have evidence that the Mediterranean has dried out and been reflooded. Like that's a thing that we have evidence for. And our biggest piece of evidence for it is all the salt at the bottom of the Mediterranean. It's not dissolved in the water, but it actually has like solid rock at the bottom of the Mediterranean. And that's called an evaporite deposit. Of course, Kent probably doesn't want to talk about evaporites because you can't form an evaporite during a flood. And the world is just chock full of evaporites, which means that, global flood couldn't actually explain the geological column. So I understand why he doesn't want to talk about evaporites, but like, yeah, we do have evidence of the Mediterranean drying out and flooding, but we don't have a damn bit of evidence of like cities much past the current coastlines.
Oops, we built our city too close to the beach. Let's get out of here. As it got a little deeper there, it would spill over past Sicily into the other half of the Mediterranean Sea. And then as it got deeper, it would spill back into the Black Sea. Here's an article, Ancient Egyptian Cities Discovered Under 30 Feet of Water in the Mediterranean Sea.
Kent, where do you think 30 feet is? It's really close to the coast, like I was saying, and that's probably subsidence. Taking a drink. Imagine just not even thinking that subsidence might be a possibility. And also, these aren't cities from before the Egyptian period. Like, you can look at that statue. That's an Egyptian statue that is right in line with Egyptian art style. In fact, if I remember correctly, that's a New Kingdom statue, which means it's happening very late in Egyptian history in terms of ancient history. Oh my goodness. Kent, Jeffrey of Arimathea Holstead for $4.99 says, Kent wouldn't last a day with a 33.6K modem. That sucks. Yes, I know how old he is. Oh man, I remember the 33.6K modems. I remember the tortured robot noises they used to make. In fact, I've used those sounds in a few of my videos. Whenever someone has a big old like brain pause where they're just like their brain isn't quite working, I like to play the old dial-up modem sounds. Sometimes over footage of Mitch McConnell having just a brain glitch. Because my goodness, regardless of his politics, he should be no longer in office. He's far, far too old. Like, his brain is literally breaking in front of our eyes. As is happening with a bunch of politicians, by the way. We need age limits in the United States for holding elected office. I'm sorry. But, like, once you get to, like, 78, you should just be, nope, can't stand for re-election. You're done. You can serve out your term, but that's it. You can't be elected to any federal office after the age of 78. I don't know.
Sea level was lower at some time in the past. Well, I agree. And as all that water goes rushing in by the Rock of Gibraltar, it's going to carve out that canyon.
You know, when you say by the Rock of Gibraltar, do you mean through the Straits of Gibraltar? Is that what you mean, Kent? Guy doesn't even know what a strait is. I'm taking another drink. In part because this is delicious.
Between Africa, Morocco, and Spain, the Rock of Gibraltar. This water...
Kent doesn't know that Gibraltar is currently owned by the UK. Kent, I see you're not up on your geography here. Because, yeah, Gibraltar is indeed owned by the UK. Now, Spain claims that that's an illegitimate bit of control there, but like they're not doing anything about it. So
rushing in is finally going to backfill the Black Sea. That would probably be the last thing that happened. That might have been 300 or 400 years after the flood, by the time the Black Sea gets backfilled. So the water is probably running backwards through Istanbul, where Istanbul, Turkey is today, all the Straits of the Dardanelles. As this water went, now today it flows the other direction, but initially it would have flowed backwards. They found all sorts of cities under 150 feet of water in the Black Sea. You can see the old beach line, ancient shoreline on this picture. Well, yeah, I believe the Black Sea was probably smaller and it now has a flooded shelf. No question, not a problem with me.
Okay, I don't know what the point of this is. Like, I would really love for this to tie into something. I don't know. Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah, people refer to the land bit of Gibraltar as the Rock of Gibraltar. Yeah, but like when you sail through something, you normally talk about the body of water you're sailing through, right? Like when I sailed through the Straits of Hormuz or the Straits of Malacca, I didn't talk about the nearby landforms. I talked about the straits I was sailing through. Right? That's how you talk about when you're sailing. I'm not going to say like, oh, I sailed real nearby some Iranian city. I'm like, no, I sailed through the Straits of Hormuz. And I was up all night, and I was drinking soda from the soda fountain while being half dressed in firefighting gear in case Iran shot missiles at me. Which is how I went through the Straits of Hormuz every single time. Which, to be honest, I mean, I got like an extra, like you can sleep the next day, some paperwork that I could hang on my rack, and spent the entire night like just hanging out, playing games, drinking soda from the soda fountain. So like, as nights go on deployment, not so bad. But yeah, I went through the Straits of Hormuz. I didn't go through like whatever, I didn't pass near whatever landform.
When this was discovered in 2000, the summer of 2000, the scuba divers discovered cities under 150 feet of water. Articles came out all over the paper. They said, oh, we have finally found evidence for Noah's flood.
I would love to see that, because I'm not sure that's true. But also, newspapers will do whatever they need to sell copies, so like maybe they did.
No, this is not evidence for Noah's flood. And they said, see, this city flooded and everybody drowned, and this is probably where the legend came from for Noah and the flood. Because it was a local little flood over there in the Black Sea. No.
Oh, okay. I get what they're saying now. Got it. Yeah, I guess I can see that making sense. Like, that is one of the things that some people who accept that Noah's flood has like a kernel of historical truth, was that it was like the flooding of the Black Sea. Yeah, I guess that's plausible. I don't know. I'm not into that aspect of like history enough to say whether or not I think that Noah's flood is likely a memory of a local flood, or if it's just made up whole cloth. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe.
Oh no, Noah's flood was a worldwide flood.
Yeah, but it wasn't though, Kent, because we know that there was never a worldwide flood. So when people are looking to try to rescue the historicity of a Bible story that we know we definitely can't take literally and still maintain that it's historical, you try to find what you can, right? These are people who are trying to rescue the historicity of Genesis for saying this. And you saying, well, it says it was a worldwide flood. Okay, sure, then Genesis is just wrong and ahistorical about that, right? Like, those are our only options. Either Noah's flood story, it's historical and about a local flood, and we know that local floods happen, or it's just not true. I personally don't particularly care which of those things is true. Like, I don't, nothing about me is like terribly upset about Noah's flood being just completely I don't want to say fictional, but ahistorical, we'll say, versus it being an exaggeration of a local flood. I don't really care. No skin off my back. But if you're someone who wants to say that there is a historical truth to the narrative, your only option is to say a large but local flood. That's it. And, conveniently, such things have occurred.
I think the continental shelf and all continental slope and all that stuff and continental rise is best explained by the ice caps melting back.
But Kent, that doesn't actually explain why there's a continental shelf, right? The continental shelves are not the result of that. The current location of the shorelines could be, but like, what about that forms the continental shelf? how does it actually physically get there as a result of sea level changing? Notice how he hasn't said that at any point. Like, what is your actual model for the formation of the physical rocks that are there right now? How do they form as a result of glaciers forming or retreating? There is no mechanism, because it's not a thing that happened, because it doesn't even make any sense.
Okay. Today, we still see the Earth showing effects of this devastating flood. Just about everything we see in the world can remind us of this flood. The hills, the valleys, the natural gas, the fossils, the coal, the oil.
Also a bunch of things that could not possibly have formed as a result of Noah's flood. Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm. That's what reminds us of Noah's flood.
There are reminders everywhere to remind us of God's judgment. When you find a herd of dinosaur bones, you ought to conclude, there was a disaster. This place was wrecked.
Okay. That might be. But Ben, remind me, are there disasters that catch herds of animals that are smaller in scale than global?
Yes.
Okay. So if you found the remains of a bunch of animals who died in a disaster, can you therefore conclude that they died in a global disaster?
No, you cannot.
Okay, just wanted to check. Sometimes I get it wrong.
But instead, Satan has twisted this where people see Grand Canyon and they think of millions of years instead of seeing Grand Canyon and thinking of flood.
Yeah, there's a few reasons for that, Kent. One is because most of those rock layers could not possibly have formed under a flood. In fact, none of them could have. But most of them couldn't have to the degree that, even suggesting it is laughable on its own. So things like the Red Wall limestone, the Bright Angel shale, the Coconino sandstone, these are things that physically could not have formed in a flood. So there's that problem. Then there's also the problem that we know that the canyon formed after the lithification of all the sediments that are currently making up the canyon walls. And we know that because the canyon walls are too steep to have formed from unconsolidated sediment. And that also poses a problem because there are hundreds of feet of the sediment that's currently there as rock. But that had to form from tens of thousands of feet of actual sediment that was displaced. And we can actually calculate the physically maximum rate of consolidation and lithification of rocks of that height, right? And it's on its own in the millions of years. So just getting from nothing to the sediment is on its own going to take at least hundreds of thousands of years. Then getting from that sediment to consolidated rock the whole way down is going to take millions of years. So I don't care how fast you want to say that the downcutting was. It still could not have been less than tens of millions of years to get us to the point where the downcutting could even start to form the canyon. So that's why people think of millions of years when they look at the Grand Canyon, because it's physically impossible for it to have done otherwise. Been otherwise? English is stupid. We're going to start doing these in Klingon.
Satan has blinded the minds of those. Of course, some of them don't want to believe anyway, so they would welcome any opportunity to doubt God's word.
This is one of the things that Ken says that kind of bugs me, right? Okay, Bent.
Yeah.
You were a young Earth creationist.
Yes, I was.
Do you jump at the opportunity to disbelieve in the Bible?
No, I don't.
Oh, hey, Mothra came by. Thanks, Mothra. Take me from Mothra. And that's one of the things, right? Generally speaking, people who were young Earth creationists do not leave because they were like, oh, the Bible, I hate that. It's generally reluctant. They often do not leave believing in God or Christianity or whatever. And they're rarely happy about it. Right? This is not a pleasant thing to go through, is a major shift in, your faith, which for many people is a core part of their identity, right? And for the people who aren't Christians, they just don't care. I don't know, Bent, you're not Hindu, to my knowledge.
No, I'm not Hindu.
How often do you feel like, oh, look, this disproves the Ramayana. I better believe it now, on that ground?
Yeah, that's never happened to me before.
Like, not even once, right?
No.
Now, you probably do believe things that are incompatible with, like, the narrative of the Ramayana, right?
Yeah, I'm sure I do.
Yeah, probably. But you don't do it because there's a particular set of holy texts that you are like, oh, we gotta get rid of this. This is dumb. I hate it. No.
Yeah.
Like, has a single decision ever in your life been dictated by your desire to avoid one of the many hells of, say, Tibetan Buddhism?
Nope.
Not even once?
Never. It's
Have
never
you
crossed my mind.
have you ever considered that you shouldn't practice cremation because corpses would defile the pure flame, and therefore you should dispose of the dead by putting them up on towers to allow the birds to pick them clean, and then you can bury the bones later?
I've never thought about that either.
Really? Even though what you're doing there by saying that maybe cremation is okay is actually a pretty big no-no in Zoroastrianism? That's never occurred to you?
Nope.
You just don't care?
I'm pretty indifferent.
Now, I know that you don't currently drink, but did you stop drinking because Allah had said no alcohol?
No, that's not why I stopped drinking.
Weird. So, like, none of your life has ever been just all about doing things to attempt to invalidate or offend other religions to which you don't belong.
That would be a correct statement. None of them have.
Huh. Interesting. Okay. Well, I guess that's probably not the motive for people to believe that science is real, Kent. Is to disprove the Bible. Now, don't get me wrong. There are edgy r/atheist types out there who do things like that, right? That's why mythicism is a thing. It's because there are people who are like, aha, this is bad for the Bible. But that's not most people. Most people just don't care.
There's a canyon I saw when I was in Idaho. Little bitty creek flowing at the bottom of this massive canyon
Been there. It's pretty cool.
that flows right into the Snake River. And you can just see flood written all over this place if you're willing to look for it.
Can you? Because I don't see where you're seeing it. We've got steep walled canyons from well-consolidated rock. It's not terribly twisty, and there aren't a lot of like barbed canyons, like side canyons coming in. So like, it's not impossible that like there could be flooding involved here, but like I don't see anything that's particularly indicative of a flood. I don't know.
This type of topography in this picture from Reader's Digest Atlas of the World shows what is called karst topography, where you have caves up in the upper left-hand corner. The caves, the limestone erodes pretty quickly.
That's true. Take a drink. Limestone does erode pretty quickly. What it actually does is it dissolves pretty quickly. But like, whatever. Who cares? It's fine. Also, what we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break because it's about that time. So, everybody, please enjoy the. Well, first we've got the Star Trek teaser, and then afterwards we've got the musical stylings of some guy named Bent Hovind. I don't know. Wait, that's you? Thanks for making so much music for the channel, Bent.
Yes, it is.
By which I
Anytime.
mean the same song.
Yeah, but it's a good song.
It is a good song. All right, well, we'll be back in just a little bit.
Chief Medical Officer's Log. Stardate 60487.9. The ship has almost finished repairs following the incident at the binary M-class worlds orbiting the star at HIP 73513. We've continued our mission exploring the Shackleton Expanse. The subpar response to the resulting medical emergencies by both myself and my staff have shown some previously unknown flaws in our preparations and procedures. While this has not shaken my trust in Starfleet's set procedures and guidelines, it has certainly opened my eyes to the need to make adjustments to better fit them to the ship's particular needs. Let the engineers keep the ship sound. The safety of this crew is my first priority. Despite our rough recent performance, I am finding myself far more excited and optimistic about our upcoming missions.
The Doctor's concerns for flawed mass casualty procedures are well-founded, and about to be brought to the fore again. The crew is in the middle of a routine day of surveys, repairs, and diagnostics when suddenly internal alarms are triggered. Something is inside the ship, and it's growing. The crew will have to depend on their knowledge of the ship, and perhaps on Commander Dolis' yoga and Pilates training, as well as Lieutenant 7012's cardio training to not just regain the ship, but even to survive. Can the crew operate the ship when no corridor or compartment is safe? Will they regain control? And how many lives will be lost in the effort? Find out next time in Jeffrey's Tube Jam, only on the Top Hats Off channel.
we are back. Thank you for sticking with us, those of you who did. All right, so I do want to say, before we get back into this, that first of all, I want to say thank you guys to everyone who supports this channel. The channel wouldn't exist without you, and given how volatile YouTube can be, it's whether a given month is going to be in the black and how much is a toss-up. And it's not easy to figure that out, especially so early in a month. And so, well, I want to say thank you so much to everyone who's a patron, or who's a channel member, or who's super chatting, or gifting memberships, or anything like that. It really means a lot. Because, frankly, without those things, this channel would probably still exist, but certainly not at the level that it is now, right? Where I'm doing 3 shows a week, every week, pretty much without fail. I think that has failed once in the past, like, 4 years. So, and I don't even plan for it to fail while I'm off on a trip later on this month. There will still be a show on that Saturday time slot. But that being said, it does mean that, you know, every month it's a question, right? And so if you are someone who is currently not supporting financially, or who is interested in supporting more, we do have some great options. The best one is the Patreon. The Patreon starts at only $1 a month. You can go much higher if you want to for higher perks. Yeah, and it's where I get to keep the most of the money. And you can get a 15% discount if you go annually. Yeah, you get access to my Discord server, you get early access to my scripted videos, stuff like that. It's really good. The channel memberships are similar. Starts at $199 a month. There's no annual discount, but it also gets you access to having your name in green, cool channel emojis, stuff like that. Yeah, so that's also a really good way to support. And of course, there's also the super chats, there's super stickers, there's gifting memberships, which also is a really quick way to get us to drink, and all that stuff. And so I don't super like going on a commercial rant. I wish I didn't have to, but unfortunately, if I don't do it, then people forget that it's a thing, and then I don't make any money, which I do need to do in order to keep the channel going at this level, or even to improve it. So if you can afford it, I would ask that you join the Patreon or the memberships or whatever. And if you've already done that and you still want to help out, there's always super chats, membership, gifting, all that kind of stuff. And also there's a wish list. Both Bent and I have wish lists in the description. And then also there is rendering for me on Sheepit. Sheepit is how I get my animations done. And basically how that works is you download the client, you enter in the login information that I have down in the description, and then when you render for Sheepit, I will get the points. And the way that the points work is that they determine how high priority my frames are and how quickly they get allocated to other renderers when I have a project up. So, there you go. Yeah, Jillian Wren says, I wrote an article last week about how YouTube screws over creators like Dapper. Look, I'm doing better than I have any right to expect in terms of being able to do this full-time without, you know, becoming homeless or anything. But I also want to say, looks like healthcare premiums are going up 200 to 300%. So I don't even know what I'm going to do next year in terms of that. So like, it's a weird time. YouTube is slowing down views on pretty much everyone. Ad revenue is not great. So like, yeah, I don't know. So I guess what I'm saying is, if you never really thought about it before, or you were on the fence, if you can afford it, I would really appreciate any support that you had. Because while October ended up as being a great month in terms of the channel, I have no idea what's in store for November. So, yeah. All right, let's continue on. Now that I'm done being a mercenary, I'm done with all the Ferengi business.
Limestone is very susceptible to acid. If you put muriatic acid...
Muriatic acid, Kent? Is that what you're trying to say? Is it muriatic acid? You know what? I'm thirsty. I'm taking a drink for Kent saying muriatic acid, as if the other vowels didn't matter.
which is hydrochloric acid, which your stomach produces. If you put it on concrete, it'll dissolve it. You can use muriatic acid, which you can buy at a swimming pool supply house for $2 or $3 a gallon. Sprinkle it on concrete. It'll start to eat the concrete away. And you can clean concrete or you can clean ceramic tile with this. Be sure to use a lot of ventilation. You don't want to breathe that stuff. You take a whiff of that and it'll burn your nasal cavities, clear down to your toenails. But
I don't think your nasal cavities extend down to your toenails, but I don't know. I'm not an anatomist. Ben, you went to medical school or something, right?
In a way, I did, but in another way, no.
But do you know enough about anatomy to know whether or not your nasal cavities extend to your toenails?
I do know that they do not extend that far.
Okay, just double checking.
And somebody's going to write and say, "Oh, Hovind's stupid. He thinks toenails are connected to the nasal cavity." No, I don't. It's a joke. Okay, lighten up.
Fair enough, Ken. You got me. You know what? I'll take a drink. Good job, Ken. In my defense, though, Kent, it's not stupider than some of the other things that you say. So you can see why maybe I would take you seriously when you say things like this.
I taught anatomy. I know they're not connected, but
I don't believe that he ever taught anatomy.
people ridicule me over the silliest thing. Anyway, the coal is often found in layers. They use strip mining to dig the coal out. Layer of dirt, layer of coal, another layer of dirt, another layer of coal. I think
by dirt, he means rock. Kent does not know the difference, apparently.
the best explanation for the karst topography and all of the topography of the oceans, of the world, of the Earth's crust, is the flood. There's a great book by Walt Brown called about the hydroplate theory. His version of the flood, or his description of it, is slightly different than mine. But he does not believe there was a canopy before. I think there had to be for several reasons, but he still has a great book, and I recommend it.
By the way, Walt Brown, his hydroplate theory is the one that suggests that maybe there was like 40 trillion hydrogen bombs going off on Earth's surface for every like square kilometer for every second of the entire duration of the flood. I probably don't have to tell you that wouldn't be a flood. That would be the conversion of the Earth into an expanding cloud of plasma. So, yeah, Walt Brown, his ideas are so crazy that even other young Earth creationists are like, nah, it's not that. Gotta be something else.
I tell people I learned years ago to eat the meat and spit out the bones, you know. I can learn things from some people and not believe everything they believe. I can learn things from a Mormon and Jehovah's Witness and a Buddhist, you know. That's perfectly fine. You can learn stuff from everybody. This is an interesting fossil. We're going to close here with this. There's a picture of a fish eating another fish.
Okay.
Either that or the little one is a dentist, I don't know. But neither one of them thought they were going to die that day.
Okay.
They were caught in the middle of supper, turned into a fossil.
Does Kent not know that choking is a thing that can happen to fish? You don't have to be caught in the middle of anything. It could just be a fish that bit more than it could swallow and died, choked to death. That's a thing that still happens today to fish, right now.
That's a good question.
I don't get why it is so hard for creationists to understand that sometimes things die during an activity. And the evidence that activity is such that it's not likely to go away just because the animal died. Yeah, like, choking is a thing that can happen to fish. It causes mortality in fish. It's for real.
Had to be buried extremely quickly.
Fossils generally are buried pretty quickly. I don't know, but like also there are places where there's the general depositional rate is high enough that fossil formation is fairly routine in that place. Bogs are an example of this. Other places are like oceanic lagoons that have anoxic conditions at the bottom of the lake, such that anything that dies and falls down there is likely to not seriously decay much before it's covered in sediment. So, like, while it is true that fossils generally form after rapid deposition, rapid deposition doesn't mean catastrophic. It can mean catastrophic. It doesn't have to. And also, most fossils are buried in situations that preclude a flood, not that demand a flood.
For this to happen. Fish fossils are found with the gills extended, the fins extended in obvious positions of terror. They're scared. Wow, what's going on?
I would love to see some examples, Kent.
Probably buried in underwater landslides, or just simply all of a sudden the water becomes like a giant mud puddle and they can't breathe.
Well, underwater landslides, or slumps as they're often called, are real, and they do in fact bury animals. And it is an example of how some fossils form. And I'll also note that you don't have to have a flood to have a slump, an undersea sediment slump. That's just a thing that happens. It can happen because the sediment deposition exceeded the angle of repose. It can happen because of earthquakes. It can happen because of floods, that's true. But, like, there's a lot of options as to why sediment might just fall down on an incline. And only some of them are floods.
And so they're panicking. Ah, I'm suffocating. You know, fish can suffocate too. You know, fish can drown, believe it or not. So there's.
Naramda puts for $2 says, Kent fish expression reading expert. Yes, Kent is in fact an expert at fish body language. That's how that works. I think I'm safe from the tutu. But it also looks like everyone is safe from getting Vermintide 2, which is too bad because it's a pretty good game.
Swimming along and they're terrified by what's happening, and they die and get packed into situations like this. Now, I get a lot of letters. People will say, see, that picture you show of the fish eating other fish proves they weren't vegetarian before the flood.
It would actually seem to do that, Kent, yeah.
Well, a couple of problems with that. We don't know for sure when this fossil formed, okay?
Jesus Christ, Kent, what the fuck is wrong with you? Taking a drink. We don't know when this fossil formed, but we know it isn't when the scientists said it formed. That's for sure. Kent, figure it out. Do you know when things happened, or do you not? And if you don't, then just get out of here. Stop pretending that you have a good reason to say that the scientists got it wrong. If you don't have any clue, that doesn't mean that other people don't also have a clue. And also, if there was a global flood, it would be the most blindingly obvious fact of geology, period. It wouldn't be a question of is this post-flood or pre-flood? You would just look. If the entire geological column, but for the top bits, were formed by the same process and the same one-year event, and then the rest of it above that had to be formed by normal, regular old geological processes that we see occurring today, they would have to be different, because the reason that rocks are different is because the deposition was different. It's different in terms of the actual sediment deposited, or the manner of deposition, or both. If the manner of deposition changed dramatically like this, it wouldn't be a question we would have to ask. We would know when every single fossil was in terms of like during the flood or post-flood. That you don't know on its own is a reason to reject the historicity of a global flood. And not necessarily you in particular, but I mean like flood geologists broadly. The very fact that this is a debate among creationists is laughably dumb. Right? It would be like modern astronomers having a debate over whether Venus or Mercury is closer to the sun. There's no reason to debate this. There's not really a possibility that we got this wrong, or that there's a really good argument that Venus is closer to the sun than Mercury. It's very obvious if you bother to look into it. Hell, if you just track their locations throughout the night, or well, throughout the year, I suppose, it becomes pretty darn obvious. I'm going to hit play.
I think it probably formed because of the flood, but it may have been later.
Cool.
Secondly, I don't know that fish are considered alive in the biblical sense.
Take a drink for maybe fish aren't alive. My goodness. Hence, when the Bible is giving rules for what animals you can and can't eat, fish come up in there. And they're included with all the other animals in like the same sort of context of things like, don't drink blood because the life is in the blood. These are the animals that you can eat and whatnot. seems like the Bible considers them to be alive. I don't know.
Though they don't have nostrils, they don't have the breath of
Fish do indeed have nostrils. Take a drink.
life, that's for sure. So it could be that a fish is just considered a complicated, self-replicating food source, as opposed to live, like with a spirit, like an animal has a spirit goes back to God that gave it. It says in the book of Ecclesiastes about the animals.
So what about lungfish, Kent? Do they have the breath of life? They breathe air. I don't know. It's curious. It's almost like you're just trying to make up excuses as to why predation in the fossil record is fine, even though you also think that there was no predation before the end of the flood. Just say that animals eating meat started at the fall, Kent. Then you just don't have to worry about it. Just say it was at the fall.
So I don't think insects either are alive in the biblical sense. As far as people say, well, Adam might have stepped on an ant and killed it, see, and there would have been death before sin.
Yeah, that is indeed death before sin.
That's a stretch. First you have to define what is life.
Life is a chemical system capable of reproduction which takes in energy and uses it for its own metabolic purposes. I don't know, can't speaking. And that maintains a thermodynamic disequilibrium with its environment. And that's what life is. That means trees are alive. It means ants are alive. It means fish are alive. It means worms are alive. It means that algae are alive. Mushrooms are alive. Bacteria are alive. Viruses? Maybe not. That's what life is, Kent. That's the thing that everything that's alive has in common. That's why you can kill a fish. That's why you can kill a tree.
Before you can define what is death. And I don't think you could prove that insects have life in the same sense that man has life. Or
Bent, do insects reproduce?
Yes.
Do they take in nutrients and use that to fuel their metabolic processes? Do they maintain a thermodynamic disequilibrium with their environment?
I think so.
Yeah. So are insects alive in the same way that man is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, cool. Look at that, Ken. We just proved it.
or animals have life. Okay.
Insects are animals, Ken. I'm taking another drink for... I mean, they might not have life the same way animals do. Yes, those animals might not be alive the way that animals are, Kent. Maybe Kent's brain isn't alive in the way that animals are.
The Bible tells us,
Well, that's the
"Appointed unto
smartest
man
thing
once
I've heard yet.
to die, but after this, the judgment." This guy, Harry Truman, lived on the side of Mount St. Helens when it was about to blow up. Tim Behrens, his KJSL radio station, I'm on every Wednesday morning with Tim and Al, St. Louis station. Tim Behrens witnessed to Harry Truman, not the president, okay, to this Harry Truman. He said Harry was a very profane man. About every other word was a cuss word. He listened very carefully about the gospel and then rejected it, refused Jesus Christ.
Why are we being told about some guy who decided not to be a Christian? Like, who cares? I don't... Whatever.
When the volcano blew, Harry was still there. They told him, "Harry, this volcano is going to blow up." He said, "I've been living here for 80 years, and I'm staying right here."
Okay.
Well, he stayed right there. Still there. Matter of fact, they never did find him after the eruption. He's probably under 80 feet of mud right now, or 300 feet of ash. But that's so silly to know the volcano's going to blow up and not get off.
Maybe he just didn't care, man. He was 80. Maybe he was just like, you know what? Maybe it's my time. That's a thing people do. People get tired of it. They get tired of life. Especially at 80. Everything aches. Everything's harder to do. You've probably done most of the things you really wanted to. It's a well-known phenomenon that very old people will sometimes just be like, you know what? This natural disaster might take me out, and that's okay. And then they just stay in their home that they've been living in for decades. That's just a thing that happens. It doesn't have to make sense to you. The way that other people choose to end their time on Earth isn't your business, Kent. And it doesn't have anything to do with whether or not they're a Christian. Plenty of Christians stick around in the face of hurricanes because they're like, you know what? I'm just not abandoning my home. And if that's that, then that's that. I'll die in my home.
Well, folks, we've been warned the entire earth is going to blow up. You better get ready for that. You better accept Jesus Christ.
Does the Bible say the world is going to blow up? I don't remember that.
Apparently it does, because Kent believes it, and he just said that, so...
Well, where does it say that?
In Kent's imagination. Nowhere else.
I guess that's also where it says that Timothy wrote 1st and 2nd Timothy.
Yeah.
Just like there was warning before Mount St. Helens blew, there is warning from Scripture before the earth falls apart. You better get in Christ. You better be saved.
Is it in Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe? A book that I was definitely supposed to read for college, but kind of forgot to, and then bullshitted my way through that class.
Oops.
Yeah. I had to come up with smart things to say, or things that sounded smart during that class discussion, so it wasn't too obvious that I had just entirely forgotten to read that book at all. I get to class and I'm like, all right, we're going to be discussing Things Fall Apart, and I'm like, oh, what are we doing now? It's like, all right, so, okay, what about this character? I'm like, oh, crap. I didn't even remember that this was even a thing. Never mind that I was supposed to read it. And, yeah, that was a stressful class.
I could imagine.
Or you're in trouble someday. He that hath the Son hath life. He that hath not the Son of God hath not life. So I recommend everybody get saved.
Hey, Kent, cool. Of course, your version of salvation is a really weird one in terms of the history of Christian thought, but, this isn't a theology program, so, whatever. And I'm sure that all of my audience is aware of the basics of Kent's theology, and if you decide that you want to become that kind of Christian, have fun with it, I guess. Although, I feel like going on long rants about things that are physically impossible, and then pretending that that's science, I feel like that might not be the best recruitment tool for a religion. I don't know. I'm not an expert at religious conversions or anything. But I feel like if someone came to me and was like, hey man, did you know that the earth is flat? Yeah, there's some bad reasons for that. You should probably totally join my religion. I would not find that a very compelling case. Carrie Bronson for $4.99 says, is Kent says something sociopathic a creationist? I think you mean bingo space. If not, could it be? I mean, it certainly could be. I don't think it is, but maybe it should be.
The Bible tells us about the flood in Matthew 24. It says, but as the days of Noah were, so shall the coming of the Son of Man be. For in the days before the flood they were eating and drinking, marrying and giving in marriage, until the day Noah entered into the ark, and knew not, till the flood came and took them all away. So shall also the coming of the Son of Man be. So, just like the flood...
Isn't the man in Son of Man usually capitalized?
I think so.
Okay. I mean, I don't super care. I just feel like that is normal, and he didn't do it, and I don't know. It's not a big deal. I was just wondering.
Flood is a good symbol or typology of what in the days of Noah, the earth was destroyed. That's a symbol or a good typology of what's happening today. How many people listen to Noah? Just almost nobody.
Interestingly, nowhere in Genesis does it say that Noah was warning people. The Quran says he was, and it's a common belief among Christians and Jews and Muslims that he was doing so. But Genesis doesn't actually say that. It just says that he and his family were the only righteous ones, and that God told him to build an ark, and that he did. Yeah, so Genesis does not indicate at all anything about that.
Noah's job was to preach, whether they listen or not. Our job is to do the same thing. Some are going to listen, some aren't. Oh well. After the break, we'll take up what we cover on our videotape number 7, question-answer session.
We're not taking a break for his break, by the way. We're just going to go right through it.
Coming up right after the break, and we should, in the next 4 classes or 5 classes, be able to finish, I hope, everything we have on videotape 7 Q&A.
But we have years and years worth of more classes to go through.
Nice.
Yeah. Doesn't that just warm your heart?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
So let's take a little break. Come right back.
I don't know how long that's going to last. But,
All right, welcome back. Now we're going to start into what is on our
back.
seminar part 7, question-answer session.
How are you going to cover a question and answer session in a class? Like, are you going to try to simulate the question and answer? Are you just going to take the questions that you happen to get on that day and treat them as a core part of the curriculum? How does... Jeez. I don't even have words. I'm just gonna... I have nothing. I'm gonna take a drink because I don't even know. Is there a mirror behind him? Oh yeah, I think it might just be the angle of some glass. Jillian Wren asks why there's a mirror behind him. I think it might just be that. Like, I think, or you know what it also could be? It could be that it's like a mirror behind a display case so that you can see the back of whatever's displayed in it. It could be that too. Because I do notice that there are things displayed down there, like rock samples or something.
This is where we throw everything else we don't have time to cover in our seminar. The pot pie, the leftovers, all goes into this. Things I didn't have time or didn't have interest in covering in the seminar.
Man, I want some pot pie. You know, there aren't enough savory pies anymore. There used to be a lot of different savory pies that people would. Now pies are pretty much always sweet. I want some good old meat pies.
So we're going to cover a wide variety of topics in no particular order. If you're trying to put order to this, good luck. If you do get a good order to it and can write an outline, send it to me. I'll use it, okay? Because we don't have one for part 7. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Solomon said, I applied my heart to know and to search and to seek out wisdom and the reason of things.
Okay.
I think it's interesting that God made the brain so that it can store information. And also, he gave us a curiosity to want to know things. There's just a lot of things to learn in this world, and it's exciting to learn. Okay, 1 Peter chapter 3 says, be ready always to give an answer. One of our jobs as Christians, as children of God, is to be able to give an answer to those who would like to know.
I feel like, Kent, you're really, really bad at that. Like, God must really be angry at you for how ridiculously bad at this you are. Like, I assume that it doesn't just mean any old answer. Like, I assume it means, like, a good answer. One that is actually, like, satisfying and, like, isn't just a lie. And yet, here's Kent.
We need to study, according to 2 Timothy 2:15. Study to show ourselves approved unto God, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. Okay, first question we're going to cover, because I get this all the time in my debates and stuff. The skeptics will say, well, don't all scientists believe in evolution?
Yes.
What they're trying to imply by that is, since you don't believe in evolution, you can't be a scientist.
Okay, I don't want to go quite that far, because you could be a scientist in some unrelated field, right? Like, Fred Hoyle was a cosmologist. He was quite a good one, and he didn't believe in evolution, right? Henry Morris wasn't a scientist, but he was a hydrological engineer. And by all accounts, he was good at hydrology. In fact, if I remember correctly, he wrote a well-regarded textbook in hydrology that was used for many years. So, like, I don't want to go that far. However, it's very similar to being like an anti-vaxxer and a doctor. It's like, is it technically possible? I suppose. But if I find out that you're an anti-vaxxer, I don't want you to treat. Or I suppose it's like being, I don't know, a cartographer who's a flat earther, right? Like, I guess it's not impossible, but like, how are you doing that? And there are parts of science where you really don't have to talk about evolution, and where you can probably do a long career just ignoring the fact that, you know, evolution is a thing. But if you're going to be a biologist or a paleontologist, or in many cases even a geologist, and you don't believe in evolution, you're just going to do bad work. Or you're going to have to pretend that it is true in order to do good work. And that's what we actually see among creationists, right? Is when they're trying to demonstrate that creationism is true, or evolution is false, or the earth is young, or whatever, they do really, really shoddy work that can't get published. And when they do get published, it's because they didn't bother with any of this stuff, and they just accepted actual science. So it's a little bit more nuanced than you can't be a scientist and reject evolution. You can, But to a large extent, the degree to which you reject science is the degree to which you can't be a scientist. And that's going to be field specific, but it is going to be a huge barrier to you being a scientist. You are going to just reject science.
If your definition says, in order to be a scientist, you have to believe in evolution, then, if that's the way you're going to define it, then of course all scientists believe in evolution by your definition.
Which is not the way I'm defining it. To me, a scientist is someone who is either publishing or preparing to publish works in a scientific field. And by preparing, I can any step of that, right? You might be writing your initial grant proposal, working on setting up an experiment, doing the experiment, collecting data, whatever, drafting papers, any of that stuff. But if you're at some stage in the process of publishing findings in an academic field that is a scientific field, you're a scientist. If you're not doing that, then you're not.
Sure. But who decides who's a scientist anyway? Who's
everyone? It's a word in English. It means everyone gets to come up with their definition that they use in their heads, and we have a consensus definition which fluctuates and is probably prototypical in nature rather than analytical. But yeah, it's the collection of English speakers, Kent, that get to decide what English words mean. That's how linguistics work.
making this call? Is there a committee someplace that's voting on this?
In some ways, no, in that there's no formal committee. But in another way, yes, in that everyone gets a vote. And your vote is so minuscule compared to the everyone that speaks English that you don't get to redefine it. But collectively, we all get to define it. That's how words work. Words mean what people use them to mean. And if people generally come to the consensus that creationists aren't scientists, then they're not.
Who makes the decision?
We all do, Kent. All the English speakers.
Of course, according to the Mormons, you can't be godly unless you're a Mormon.
Okay. I don't care. I don't know what that has to do with anything.
And according to the Jehovah's Witnesses, you can't be godly unless you're one of them. Every group does this. And the scientists often are no different. They think, well, you can't be a scientist unless you believe in evolution. So therefore, if you don't believe in evolution, you are not a scientist. In John chapter 7, in verse number 40.
We don't have a counter for that? You're just going to move on to the Bible, Kent? I'm just going to take a drink for not even attempting to come up with a counter. Look up with the Bible. Okay, I don't care. The Bible doesn't use the word scientist. Scientists didn't exist when the Bible was being written.
Very interesting passage here, and I'll watch this carefully. Many of the people, therefore, when they heard this saying, said, of a truth, this is the prophet. Others said, this is the Christ. But some said, shall Christ come out of Galilee? Hath not the Scriptures said that Christ cometh of the seed of David and out of the town of Bethlehem where David was? So there was a division among them, among the people because of him. And some of them would have taken him, but no man laid hands on him. Then came the officers to the chief priests and Pharisees, and they said unto them, why have ye not brought him?
I really want to know what this has to do with the definition of scientist. Can you see any connection there, Ben?
I think he moved on, but
so we're just on to an entirely new topic?
You can never really tell with Kent.
Yeah.
Because he often doesn't get to a point. So moving on can be ambiguous.
Okay.
And the officer said, never man spake like this man. Then answered them, the Pharisees, are ye also deceived? Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed on him? This people who knoweth not the law are cursed. Okay, let's stop right here and look at some of the logic here.
Why?
The people divided over a question. I thought the Bible says Christ comes out of Bethlehem. And
no one ever said anything about the Bible during the time of Jesus' life. Do you know, or Ben, sorry, would you like to know why no one ever said anything about the Bible during Jesus' life?
Because it didn't exist then.
It didn't exist. That's right. Some of the texts existed, not all of them, and no one had the idea of binding them all into a collection that was in some way canonized and the official books of the religion. The closest you could get would be a Torah scroll. And even that's a pretty distant thing. To this day, it's a pretty distant thing, right? You went into a current modern synagogue, we're like, hey, can I see one of your Bibles? They're not going to hand you the Torah scroll. If you point at the little house that the Torah scroll sits in, You're like, hey, what's in there? They're not going to say the Bible. They're going to say the Torah scroll. And yet that's still the closest that we could reasonably find for what the Bible is at this time. There were a collection of writings, most in Hebrew, but also most of them translated into Greek, which is the language most people were reading them in. Some of them, some of them seem to have been composed in Greek. Some of them seem to have not been composed in Greek, but later translated, and then the Greek, the original Hebrew or Aramaic was lost. Some of them were written in Aramaic. Large parts of David come to mind. Certain parts of the prophets where God has, like, the most of the Bible is written in Hebrew, but when God tells the prophet to go say something, often that's in Aramaic because the people that he's telling the prophet to go talk to were speaking Aramaic at the time. And, like, there's this whole milieu in which there are different books floating around. There's, like, books that Kent wouldn't consider canon, like the various books of Maccabees, or the books of Enoch, or Judith, or Tobit, or the Wisdom of Solomon. All of these are floating around. All of these are being treated variously as scripture or not by different people. There's no one list. There's some idea that maybe there's a 22 or 26 or whatever list canon, but no one can agree on what's actually in it beyond the Torah. There is no Bible at this time. Kent is importing a later idea, a much later idea, an idea hundreds of years in the future from this time period, and just bringing it back into here. That's an inappropriate thing to do. It's a dumb thing to do. That's not how the Bible works. There was no Bible at the time.
This guy comes out of Galilee. Right away, they're arguing about the wrong subject, aren't they? They didn't have all the knowledge they needed to make this argument. Jesus did come from Bethlehem, didn't he? He's born in Bethlehem. He grew up in Galilee. So when the scripture said...
So, I'll say this. There are gospel accounts, 2 of them, that involve that story. But the degree to which those are historical is, to put it mildly, it's up for debate. It's probably not. Neither of them is probably historical. For one thing, we know that some of the details don't make a whole lot of sense, right? So, for instance, there's no evidence of a slaughter of the innocents by Herod. Because even though the Romans were pretty brutal, they were also pretty anti-uprising, and very few things is going to cause an uprising, like killing a bunch of babies, right? Even in the ancient world, which did not have as high regard for human life as we do today, they still weren't like, oh yeah, you should totally just kill all the babies in an entire country. No one would be okay with that. There's no archaeological evidence, there's no writings about this, there's just nothing to indicate that the slaughter of the innocent ever happened, outside of the gospel. Also, the census that Jesus is supposed to be in Bethlehem for, well, that David and Mary are supposed to be in Bethlehem for, that's not a real thing, right? Censuses did happen, and they happen all over the Roman Empire all the time, but they were to determine where people lived so that the taxes for those locations could be reasonably assessed, right? Because you're the Romans, right? You want an efficient tax system. And if you decide that one village should pay some absurd amount in taxes that that village could not possibly produce, all you're going to do is get your future accounting wrong, and then what? Try to tax a village into the ground? Well, what good is that going to do you? They're not going to produce any future taxes if they don't even exist because you tax them into the ground. There's no advantage to having people go to a place they don't live so that you can put them in a census so that you can apportion taxes, to their ancestral hometown? Like, Mary and Joseph aren't going to be providing for the tax base of Bethlehem because they're not staying there. So what would be the point of counting them there? Like, oh, hey, this many people in Judea have ancient ancestors from Bethlehem? Who cares? What relevance is that? So we know that census is not something that happened as described in the Gospels. Which means that from a historical standpoint, and you don't have to necessarily take this on board, but from the standpoint of a historian looking at these texts, the most likely explanation is that the stories of Bethlehem are a post hoc addition to counter this very objection. And Jesus was more likely, from a historical standpoint, born in Nazareth. You don't have to believe me. You don't have to take that as, like, the truth. But from a historical standpoint, that's the more likeliest cause of this whole thing. Kent Jeffrey of Arimathea Halstead for $4.99 says, just make everything canon. F it. Who cares? Stop cherry picking. Yes, everything is canon. Nothing is canon. Do it. I've actually heard people make that argument for some franchises. Where it's like, everything's canon. It's like, what about the stuff that contradicts the other stuff? Yep, that too. Okay.
He comes out of Bethlehem. It's exactly correct. So here they are arguing about the wrong subject, vehemently, divided over this, okay? Then the chief priests sent the officers to get him. Why didn't they go? I see.
I'm sorry, why didn't the chief priests go and arrest someone? Do you know what a chief priest is and does, Kent? It's not go out and make arrests. It's like saying, why didn't the mayor go arrest the murder suspect? Because that's not his freaking job. That's not what he's trained for. Why would he? You think the president is going to go and arrest people for federal crimes? No. What are you talking about, Kent? Why would the chief... I'm taking another drink. Why didn't the chief priest go out and arrest him? Because that's not what they do. Jeez. Like, when you were arrested, Kent, you know who didn't show up? The governor of Florida. The president of the United States. None of those people showed up to arrest you, Kent. It was the cops. You know what the ancient version of the cops were? The various temple guards and city guards and Roman soldiers and whatnot. They were the people who went on and did arrests. They were the people who took people into... I'm sorry. Into custody.
See this all the time in debates, you know, or in seminars. There'll be a group of students that'll come from some university, and they come with a list of questions to ask me, to trick me.
Okay.
I say, where did you get those questions? Well, from my professor. Why didn't he come?
Probably because he's busy. Like, that's probably it. He had stuff to do. Professors are busy, Kent. Like, actual people who teach actual students actual science, they're busy. They're grading papers. They're writing their own papers. They're doing their own research. They're planning for the next class. They're doing they're compiling their grade books. I don't know if you know any professors, Kent. I'm assuming that he doesn't, right? But I know some professors. They're busy as heck. All the time. During the school year, at least. It is not an easy or light job to be a professor. There's a lot of work that goes behind it, at least if you want to do a good job. Tyrion says, I would pay money to see Trump arrest Kent. Yeah, that would be a lot of fun, actually. I would enjoy that show. Yeah.
He sends the students. I answer all their questions. They leave confused. They go back to their professor. And then he makes fun of them for being so stupid that they couldn't trick me.
Oh, look, there's a story that didn't happen. Take a drink.
Watch what happened here. The guys came back, and the Pharisee said, why didn't you take him? And they said, nobody ever spoke like this guy. Then watch the logic here. It's exactly what happens today on the creation-evolution topic. No different.
Okay.
They said, are ye also deceived? Have any of the rulers or of the Pharisees believed on him? What are they trying to imply by that? Since none of us guys who know the Bible believe...
Did they say the Bible or did they say the law, Kent? Because the law is what's going on in the Torah. And it's not the Bible. Because again, there was no Bible.
In him, therefore he can't be right. This is what some of the scientists will say. Well, how many scientists believe in creation? Same kind of thing, okay?
Yeah, I get it, Ken. It is an argument from authority. And technically that is logically fallacious. However, there is something to ask yourself. When all the experts say one thing, and you got a few crackpots saying a different thing, you don't have the time or the energy or the ability to look into it yourself. It's not a super unreasonable idea to just say, you know what? I'm going to go with the experts. They're not always right. And you might get led astray sometimes. But you're going to get led astray far less frequently than if you just go with the experts, right? Like, if all the mechanics say, oh, hey, you need a new serpentine belt. But then your cousin Ted is like, I don't know, man. Have you checked your carburetor pads? Cousin Ted is probably not the one you should listen to. Just saying.
Since no scientists believe in creation, therefore it must not be true. Well, first place, a lot of scientists believe in creation, okay? And secondly, I'd like to find out who's deciding who's a scientist. So they started with a false assumption that Jesus was from Galilee.
Not a false assumption. He was known as Jesus of Nazareth. Nazareth is a town in Galilee. If I were known as Dapper of Tucson, it wouldn't be a false assumption to say I'm from Arizona. Now, it would be false to say I was originally from Arizona, but you'd be right that I'm from Arizona, at least currently.
And since the Pharisees had not believed on him, they used that as proof that he was not right. Same thing today. The scientists will say, well, because most scientists believe in evolution, therefore evolution must be true. Well, talk about flawed logic from the start. Okay? No, all scientists don't believe in evolution, for one thing. And even if they did, that still would mean nothing.
It would mean something. It would mean that the people who dedicate their lives to figuring out what the answer to questions about evolution is are the people who also accept evolution, right? If everyone, or virtually everyone, who spends their entire life dedicated to a certain set of questions all come to the same conclusion, there's probably a good reason for that. Like I said, is it logically necessary that they be right? No, it's not. That's technically illogical. But you don't have time to be completely logical in everything in your life. That's why that we use things like expert knowledge as a heuristic. And from a heuristic standpoint, yeah, you're going to be right way more often believing the expert. George McMarion User Wolf says, you don't technically need any credentials to publish, right? Just good science? Yep, absolutely. People without PhDs or any other official credentials in a topic have definitely published in well-respected journals before. There is no degree requirement. There is no particular training requirement. You just have to pass peer review. And in fact, normally, when you submit a manuscript for peer review, who it is that wrote the manuscript is hidden from the reviewers. So they don't actually know what your credentials are, and they can't check. They'll probably assume that you have credentials that are normal for publishing in that field, but they don't actually know. And so, yeah, if you can do good work and you don't have a degree, you'll still get published. It's not common because most people who don't have the credentials don't have the background knowledge to know how to publish a good paper in that topic. But there's no, official or rules-based barrier. It's just, can you actually do the work? And yeah, if you can, go for it. Publish.
In an argument, they'll say, has he published in major science journals? Well, suppose, in order to publish a paper in a science journal, you have to publish something that doesn't go against the evolution theory.
You don't. That's not a requirement in any journal. There are, however, a number of creationist journals that require that you not publish anything that goes against creationism. And that's in their actual guidelines for submission. But yet, no, there's no requirement that you not publish anything that goes against evolution in any actual scientific journal. You actually have to have good work, and you have to be able to have your data stand up to scrutiny, and you have to have not forgotten things like controls or other confounding variables. But if there were an actual scientific experiment or other, study that actually presented problems for evolution, there is no barrier to publishing it other than that it be good work. But just like there's no barrier to publishing flat Earth papers, you're probably not going to find any. You know why? Because you can't make a good flat Earth paper because flat Earth isn't true. Similarly, anti-evolution isn't true. The young Earth isn't true. So if you want to publish a good paper on it, you're just not going to be able to. I've read what papers get passed in young Earth creationist quote-unquote journals. They're not good work. They're not peer-reviewed. They're usually so laughably bad that an undergrad at the sophomore level could take them apart piece by piece, as long as they're an undergrad in a related topic.
If your article smacks of creationism, it'll be rejected.
Nope. There's no such rule. You just have to be able to pass peer review, which means you have to do good work. You have to have well-founded conclusions. You have to have done your math right. You have to have crossed your T's, dotted your I's. You have to have taken into account the rest of the literature on that topic. Paradigm-shifting stuff gets published. Sometimes it's even retracted, right? But stuff like this does get published. Stuff that goes against the consensus. In fact, that's the stuff that's the most interesting. Also the stuff that has the highest chance of not being right, but it's still the most interesting, and it gets published all the time because the study was good. The fact that creationists aren't publishing creationist stuff in peer-reviewed journals is because creationism is so badly wrong It doesn't stand a snowball's chance in hell of passing peer review. The weirdo CKA Evan, who's been a member for a whole month and is at the amulet level, says, but can you pass peer review with PEAR? It depends. Personally, I think that the best pairs that pass peer review are those big round Asian pairs. I love those things. You just get more pear. What's not to like about that? And also, like, the worst part of a pear is the skin. And, like, flesh to skin ratio, those big old Asian pears, they have the best ratio. So. Yep.
Same thing happened in the Soviet Union 15 years ago. Suppose you got up in front of your class of kids in the Soviet Union and said, boys and girls, I don't believe in communism. Doesn't work. Capitalism is a much better system.
Which is not a situation about peer review, you'll note, because getting up in front of your classroom isn't getting up in front of your peers. But okay.
What would happen?
Depends on how many of your classroom students want to report you.
You wouldn't be teaching tomorrow, would you?
Yeah, you'd probably have a few days. The various police forces of the Soviet Union weren't that efficient. When is this video from? So I believe this video is from the early 2000s or maybe the mid 2000s.
You'd be lucky to be alive tomorrow, right?
No, you'd be very much alive the next day. The Soviets had sham trials, and they typically didn't execute people for political crimes. They typically exiled them to gulags. So, like, yeah, you would almost certainly be alive for months. I'm just going to take a drink for Kent not even knowing the basics of how the Soviet Union worked, while trying to use them as a boogeyman.
So then the teachers get up in front of their students and say, all the teachers believe in communism. Therefore, it must be right. No, therefore, it must be ruthless.
Tell you what, you let me know the next time someone is sent to the gulag or is executed for believing in creationism, and I will stand with you against that action. I don't think it's an appropriate response to gulag or kill someone. But as far as I know, that hasn't happened. Bent, are you aware of anyone who's been executed or sent to a labor camp in the middle of the frozen wastes for not accepting evolution?
I'm not. No.
No, okay. Does like nature or the proceedings of the Academy or the Royal Academy of Sciences or any of those places, they have the power to execute or exile people?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either.
Right? And if they say all scientists believe in evolution, well, it's not true. But even if it was true, that still wouldn't prove it's right. That might just prove it's ruthless.
Yeah, but it's not, though. Kent. Okay, I know that if Kent were to see this now, he'd be like, well, they put me in prison. Kent, they put you in prison for tax evasion. They didn't put you in prison for believing in Jesus or for being a creationist. In fact, you're currently allowed to do both of those things right now. On your land in Alabama, I believe. Yeah, it's Alabama. Wait, is it Alabama? It's Alabama, right?
I think so.
Okay, yeah. I don't know why I was having a weird brain fart on that one. Like, you're allowed to do that. No one cares. Science isn't ruthless. No one's going to come and kill you. No one's going to come and exile you. No one's going to lock you up for being a science denier. There are much more popular science deniers than you. They don't get locked up for it. Some of them get to be in charge of the Health and Human Services. Yeah. Perry Bronson for $1.99 says, mathematically superior Asian pair, Dapper 2025. I stand by this. The Asian pair is mathematically superior to most other pairs. Yep. Admiral Snappy Turtle, who's been a member for 6 months, says, we need more Star Trek endurance and the crew of the Kong Z. Go 7 of 12, he might become the next Chancellor of the Klingon Empire. Okay, so I agree with you. We do need more Star Trek endurance. You should tell my players that. Because we're not doing it this week. So that's fun. But also, Dapper's a professional because I typed in the wrong number into the funding field. Sorry about that. All right, here we go.
In other words, if you don't believe in it, you'll get fired. And I'll show you some examples where they did get fired here in a second.
Oh, okay. So when you were comparing being executed in your mind, which is actually more likely just exile, which is still not fun. Your actual comparison was to being fired. I don't know. I feel like one of those is sort of incomparable, and I am pouring some persimmon soju. I don't think I've had persimmon. No, wait, no, this is passion fruit. Still starts with a P. That's all that matters.
The majority followed Aaron into rebellion in Exodus chapter 32. The majority voted not to go into the promised land. Remember that? 10-2. The majority was wrong, all right? The majority followed false gods many times throughout the Old Testament. They were wrong. The majority of religious leaders hated Jesus. They were wrong. The majority of the Roman Empire hated Christians. Majority opinion means nothing in an argument. And many thousands...
Okay. In terms of strict logic, that's true. But again, it's not generally true when you can demonstrate expertise. Did the majority of the Romans have expertise in Christianity? Well, we know they didn't, right? Because we know that they were saying things about Christianity in their writings that weren't actually true about the early Christians. Like, they weren't actually killing and eating people, that we know of, at least, I suppose. And yet we get them accused of that in Roman writings. So the majority is important when it's the majority of experts. I'm not going to ask the majority of people about evolution. But I might be interested in the majority of the actual evolutionary biologists, because these are the people who have dedicated their entire adult lives to answering those questions. Just like the majority of people aren't going to be likely to get the right answer as to what's wrong with my car, but the majority of mechanics probably will. So, yeah. Babo Tund says, also was a common treatment that people were just denied to work in their field, usually intellectuals. Yeah, that was another thing that could happen in the Soviet Union. That's even less severe. Which I guess is more comparable to what Kent's complaining about. But also, generally speaking, creationists are not actually usually fired from their jobs for being creationists. Personally, I think they should be. I don't think you should be allowed to teach kids about topics involving evolution, the age of the Earth, creation, that kind of stuff, if you're just going to be a science denier about it. It's like I don't think that we should have flat earthers teaching people earth science or geography classes. But I'm not in charge. And I know that a lot of people disagree with me on that. Borgenpori says, are we having problems with the cast of Star Trek Endurance? Is everyone okay? Everyone is fine. They're just not around this week.
Thousands of scientists with degrees from major universities do believe in creation. But you don't have to have a degree from a university to be a scientist.
That's true. Take a drink. You absolutely do not. It helps because it helps you know what you need to do, but yeah, you do not need a degree. You just got to do the work, and you got to do it well.
Many people down through history didn't even finish high school and became great inventors and great scientists, They just had a desire to learn, a desire to use what they had learned to improve things or invent new things.
All right, well, that is where we're going to leave things. Kent is right about that. It is indeed the case that you do not need a degree in order to be a scientist or to be an inventor. It does help, though. That being said, you got anything you want to tell people about something's coming up for you?
No.
Okay. Well, let's see. What's coming up for us? For the channel, I suppose. Well, on Thursday, we've got Creationists Even Lie About Christians. Baritone Creation Science Denial. Baritone Creationist Science Denial Part 2. That is coming on Thursday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern. So then we've got on Saturday at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern, we've got the next Dapper Reacts, where we're going to continue talking about the reasons that Brian Thomas says that the entire Bible is historically reliable, none of which have made sense so far. So there's that. Let's see. Then on Sunday, actually, I'm going to be over on Chesh's channel, where we're going to be doing a dive into the lore of Warhammer 40k with me and Chesh and Dr. Kip Davis. So Kip is very confused about what that even means, but that's okay. It'll be fun anyway. Then on next Tuesday, we should be doing Tisdale Tuesday with Chesh. and that should be at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So the time you're probably used to. Yeah, so that's what's coming up in the next week or so. Feel free to head over to the Discord where we're going to be doing some Godzilla. We're going to be doing, unfortunately, the 1985 Godzilla, the American version, because I couldn't find the 1984 Japanese version, which is the version I prefer for that movie. But still, it's a fun movie anyway. So with that being said, I want to say, first of all, thank you so much to everyone who helped support the channel. As you know, from month to month, it's always a gamble. And so I want to say thank you to everyone who helps, whether you're a patron, a channel member, whether you've super chatted, anything like that. And again, check the description if you are not currently supporting and you can afford to and are interested in doing so. With that, though, we're going to get out of here. I hope you all have a safe rest of your week. And furthermore, ice must be abolished.
Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Ben Hovind, Tapioca Weasel, Sphincter of Doom, Regios, Landon Knoll, Ian Chen, Eleron Teller, Phil Rivera, Kelvin Rostock Van Manen, David Hercules, Joshua Geese, Vollus, Dan Sheedy, Pega Jace, The Plastic Mouse, Arrow Dodger, Gordon Love Science, Amber Athelian, Pixie Purple, Agricola Siqua, Max Cherry, North Texas Fossils, and John Ackerman. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 15% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.